The lunch rush had just ended when James burst into Nana's Place, our family's Italian restaurant of 47 years, waving a check like he'd won the lottery. His expensive suit looked out of place among the checkered tablecloths and vintage photographs that lined our walls. "We're rich, Sofia," he announced, his voice echoing through the nearly empty dining room. I just sold everything. I froze in the middle of wiping down a table, my heart stopping. "What do you mean, everything?" "My name is Sofia Russo, and at 35, I'd spent my entire life in this restaurant. While James had run off to business school and a string of failed ventures, I'd stayed, learning every recipe, every technique, every secret that made our grandmother's food legendary in Chicago's Little Italy." James' grin widened as he approached, practically bouncing with excitement. "The whole place, the building, the equipment, even Nana's recipe book. Some big restaurant group wants to turn it into a chain. They're paying $1 million. The cleaning rag slipped from my fingers. "You did what?" "Come on, Sofia. Don't look at me like that," he said, straightening his designer tie. "This place is barely breaking even. $1 million is more than we'd make in 10 years. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "James, you can't sell the restaurant without my permission. I own half of it." He waved his hand dismissively. "I'm the majority owner since Dad died. 51%, remember. I can make executive decisions." The room seemed to spin. Dad had given James the controlling share 6 months ago on his deathbed, believing his MBA-educated son would make smart business decisions while I continued running the day-to-day operations. "He trusted you to protect our family's legacy." "Legacy doesn't pay the bills, Sofia," James coughed. "Besides, I'll give you your share once the money clears. Think about it. You could finally take that culinary course in Italy you're always talking about." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "The recipe book. You sold Nana's recipe book?" "Yeah, that's what they really wanted. All those secret family recipes." He smirked. Who knew Nana's old notebook would be worth so much? What James didn't know, what no one knew except me, was that the leather-bound book he just sold wasn't the real recipe book. It was a decoy I created years ago when James first started talking about modernizing the business. The real book, with its oil-stained pages and Nana's careful handwriting, was safely hidden in my apartment, along with something else James had no idea existed: legal documents proving that our grandmother had left the recipes specifically to me in her will, separate from the restaurant ownership. "When's the sale finalizing?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "End of the month," he said, tucking the check into his pocket. "They're sending someone tomorrow to start inventorying everything. We need to be out by the 30th. I nodded slowly, my mind already racing with plans. "Well, I guess I better start packing up the kitchen." James clapped me on the shoulder. "That's the spirit. Trust me, this is the best thing that could happen to us." That recipe book was wasted in this little neighborhood joint. If he noticed the slight smile on my face, he didn't show it. James had always been too busy looking at the big picture to notice the details, like how some of the measurements in the decoy recipe book were subtly wrong or how certain crucial steps were missing entirely. That evening, after James left to celebrate at some upscale bar downtown, I sat alone in the dimly lit restaurant. The space felt different now, heavy with memories and the weight of what was to come. Every surface held a story: the counter where Nana taught me to knead dough, the booth where Dad would do the books every night, the kitchen where I'd spent countless hours perfecting each recipe until they were exactly right. I pulled out my phone and called Marco, my best friend since childhood, and now one of Chicago's top restaurant lawyers. "They bought it?" he asked as soon as he picked up. "Hook, line, and sinker," I replied. "James sold them the fake recipe book just like we thought he would." Marco's low whistle crackled through the speaker. "And they have no idea." "None. But we need to move fast. They're sending someone tomorrow to start inventorying." "Don't worry," Marco assured me. "I've got the paperwork ready. We can file first thing in the morning. The separate copyright on the recipes that your grandmother left you will stop them from using any of them, real or fake." I stood up and walked to the kitchen, running my hand along the worn stainless steel counters. "What about the restaurant group? Once they realize the recipes don't work?" "That's the beauty of it," Marco said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "They bought the business based on fraudulent representations from James. He sold them something he didn't have the right to sell. They'll have to unwind the whole deal. And James? Best case for him, they sue him for breach of contract. Worst case, fraud charges. Marco paused. Are you sure you want to do this to your brother? I thought about James's smug face as he waved that check around, about how easily he'd sold our family's legacy for a quick profit. He made his choice. Now he has to live with it. After hanging up, I went to my apartment above the restaurant and retrieved the real recipe book from its hiding place. The leather was soft with age, the pages yellow and fragrant with decades of cooking. I opened it carefully, reading Nana's elegant handwriting. To my dearest Sofia, who understands that good food is made with love, not profit. These recipes are your inheritance, separate from the restaurant. Guard them well, and use them wisely. Love, Nana. I smiled, remembering the day she'd shown me the will, explaining why she'd left the recipes to me alone. James has his father's head for business, she'd said, but you, Sofia, you have my heart for cooking. These recipes aren't just instructions. They're our family's soul. The next morning, I arrived early to find a young woman in a business suit waiting outside the restaurant. Hi, she said brightly, extending her hand. I'm Jennifer from Capital Restaurant Group. I'm here to start the inventory. I let her in, watching as she began photographing the dining room. Beautiful space, she commented. We're thinking of keeping some of the vintage elements, but updating the overall look. Make it more Instagram friendly. I nodded politely, imagining what Nana would say about making her restaurant Instagram friendly. Jennifer continued chattering as she worked, outlining their plans to streamline the menu, add craft cocktails, maybe even a weekend brunch service. Of course, the real gold mine is in those family recipes, she said, pulling out a tablet. Our R&D team is excited to start testing them. Mr. Russo mentioned there's a secret ingredient in the marinara sauce that makes it special. Did he? I asked innocently. That's interesting. Before she could respond, the front door chimed. Marco walked in, briefcase in hand, followed by two other lawyers from his firm. Good morning, he said formally. I'm Marco Vanetti, legal counsel for Sofia Russo. I believe we need to discuss some irregularities with this sale. Jennifer's smile faltered. I'm not authorized to. That's fine. Marco cut in smoothly. Our office has already contacted your legal department. They should be receiving our filing any minute now. As if on cue, Jennifer's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her eyes widening. I need to make a call. She hurried outside, phone pressed to her ear. Through the window, I could see her gesturing animatedly as she spoke. Ready for this? Marco asked quietly. I took a deep breath, thinking about all the years I'd spent in this restaurant, all the love and care that had gone into every dish we served. More than ready. The next few hours were a blur of legal discussions and phone calls. Capital Restaurant Group's lawyers arrived, then their executives. James showed up around noon, his face red with anger. What did you do? He demanded as soon as he saw me. I met his gaze calmly. I protected our family's legacy, the one you tried to sell to the highest bidder. Protected? You've ruined everything. He waved the now void check in my face. $1 million, Sofia. Do you have any idea what we could have done with that money? Do you have any idea what you were throwing away? I countered. This isn't just a business, James. It's everything Nana and Dad worked for. It's our history, our heritage. He laughed bitterly. Heritage doesn't pay the bills. This place is barely staying afloat. That's not true, Marco interjected, pulling out a file. According to the books, which I've reviewed thoroughly, Nana's place has been consistently profitable. Not millions, but solid returns every year. The only drain on its resources has been covering your failed business ventures. James's face paled. What are you talking about? I stepped closer to my brother, keeping my voice low. Did you think I didn't know about the loans you took out against the restaurant? The money you borrowed from the accounts? Dad might have given you controlling interest, but I've been watching the books for years. I was going to pay it all back, he protested weakly. With what? The money from selling our family's legacy. I shook my head. It's over, James. The sale is void because you tried to sell something that wasn't yours to sell. The recipes belong to me. Legally, exclusively, and irrevocably. The fallout from James's failed sale hit like a tornado. Capital Restaurant Group's lawyers spent hours in heated discussion with Marco, threatening lawsuits and demanding compensation for their wasted time and resources. James sat in Nana's favorite booth, his head in his hands, as his $1 million deal crumbled around him. The recipes were the cornerstone of the acquisition, their league counsel argued, blaring at James. Without them, this deal is worthless. I watched from behind the counter, polishing glasses that didn't need polishing as Marco handled the negotiations. My client is willing to be reasonable, he said smoothly. She'll agree not to pursue legal action against Capital Restaurant Group for attempting to purchase stolen intellectual property, provided you drop all claims against the restaurant. By evening, they had worked out an agreement. Capital Restaurant Group would walk away, their deposit refunded, and both sides would sign non-disclosure agreements about the entire fiasco. As their executives filed out, Jennifer, the inventory specialist, paused by the door. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I think you made the right choice. Places like this, they're special. You can't replicate that kind of history." After everyone left, James remained in the booth, staring blankly at the checkered tablecloth. I started my usual closing routine, wiping tables, counting the register, preparing for tomorrow's opening. The familiar tasks helped calm my nerves after the day's chaos. "Why did you do it?" James finally asked, his voice hoarse. We could have been set for life. I stopped what I was doing and looked at my brother, really looked at him. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his carefully styled hair a mess from running his fingers through it. He looked older than his 38 years, worn down by years of chasing the next big thing. "Come with me," I said, heading toward the kitchen. Confused, he followed. In the kitchen, I pulled out the real recipe book from its hiding place and set it on the steel prep table. "This is why," I said, opening it carefully. "Look." James leaned over the book, his eyes widening as he recognized Nana's handwriting. "But I sold the recipe book." "How?" "You sold a copy I made years ago," I explained. "After you started talking about modernizing the restaurant, about making it more marketable, I knew someday you'd try something like this." He picked up the book, turning the pages slowly. Each one was filled with not just recipes, but memories. Nana's notes in the margins, little drawings she'd made to illustrate techniques, spots where sauce had splattered during countless cooking sessions. "There's more," I said, pulling out another folder. "Nana left the recipes to me in her will, separate from the restaurant ownership. She knew this might happen someday." James sank onto a nearby stool, still holding the recipe book. "She knew I'd try to sell it?" "She knew you had different dreams than this place," I said gently. "That's not a bad thing, James. But this restaurant, these recipes, they're not just assets on a balance sheet. They're our family's heart." He was quiet for a long moment, running his fingers over a page where Nana had written special instructions for her marinara sauce. I could see him mouthing the words as he read, remembering how she used to say them. "I really messed up, didn't I?" he finally said. "Yes," I agreed. "But not just today. You've been messing up for years, taking loans against the restaurant, trying to fund your other ventures. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" He looked up sharply. "How long have you known?" "Since the first time you borrowed money for that tech startup 3 years ago," I said. "I've been keeping track of everything, James. The restaurant isn't failing. It's been supporting your failures." The truth seemed to hit him like a physical blow. He closed the recipe book carefully, setting it back on the table. "What happens now?" I pulled out another folder, one Marco had prepared weeks ago, anticipating this moment. "Now you have a choice. You can fight me on this, try to maintain control of the restaurant, maybe even sue me for interfering with your sale. Or, he prompted when I paused, "or you can sign these papers transferring your ownership to me. In exchange, I'll assume all the debt you've accumulated, clean up the financial mess, and give you a fresh start." "You do that?" he asked, surprise evident in his voice. "After everything?" I thought about all the times I'd watched him chase dreams that were never quite right for him, all the schemes and plans that had ultimately led to this moment. "You're my brother, James. I don't want to see you fail. I just want to protect what matters." He picked up the papers, reading through them slowly. "This would mean giving up everything, my share of the restaurant, my say in how it's run." "Yes," I said firmly, "but it also means walking away clean. No debt, no angry investors, no legal problems. Just a fresh start." James was quiet for a long time, staring at the papers. Finally, he looked up at me. "You really love this place, don't you?" "It's not just a place," I said, gesturing around the kitchen. "It's everything Nana taught us, Everything Dad believed in. It's family and tradition and home, he finished softly. I forgot that somewhere along the way. He picked up a pen from the counter and signed the papers without further hesitation. As he did, I saw something shift in his expression. Not defeat, but relief. I'm sorry, Sophia, he said, standing up. I got so caught up in trying to make it big that I forgot what we already had. I took the signed papers, feeling the weight of responsibility settle more firmly on my shoulders. What will you do now? He smiled slightly, straightening his tie. Maybe it's time I stopped trying to be the big shot businessman and figured out what I'm actually good at. After he left, I sat in a quiet kitchen, the real recipe book open in front of me. Each page held not just instructions for dishes, but pieces of our family's story. I could almost hear Nana's voice reading them, teaching me the importance of patience, of doing things right, of understanding that some things can't be rushed or scaled or modernized. The next morning, I arrived early as usual, unlocking the front door just as the sun was starting to paint the sky pink. The restaurant felt different somehow, lighter, clearer, more purposeful. As I started the coffee and began prep for the day, I thought about all the changes I wanted to make. Not to modernize or expand, but to preserve and enhance what made Nana's place special. Marco stopped by mid-morning with the official ownership transfer documents. It's all done, he said, handing me the paperwork. The restaurant is yours, free and clear. Well, not exactly clear. You've taken on quite a bit of James's debt. I nodded, already having planned for this. I know, but I've got a plan for that. He raised an eyebrow. Want to share? Remember how I said the restaurant wasn't failing? I've been working on something for the past year. Cooking classes, private dining experiences, special events. There's a waiting list already. Marco grinned. Using Nana's recipes. Some of them. But mostly teaching what she taught me. That good food is about more than just following instructions. It's about heart, about tradition, about bringing people together. The lunch rush started to trickle in. Regular customers who'd been coming to Nana's place for years. They settled into their usual tables, ordered their usual dishes, shared their usual stories. But today, watching them, I saw something more clearly than ever before. This wasn't just a restaurant serving food. It was a keeper of memories, a creator of moments, a place where people came not just to eat, but to be part of something bigger than themselves. James had tried to sell that, not understanding that its real value couldn't be measured in dollars. That evening, as I was closing up, I found a note slipped under the door. It was from James. Sophia, I've been thinking about what you said about family and tradition. You were right, I lost sight of what matters. I'm heading to California for a while. Going to stay with our cousin Tommy and maybe help him with his vineyard. Manual labor, if you can believe it. But before I go, I wanted you to know something. I found one of Nana's old notebooks in my apartment. Not recipes, but stories about how she and Grandpa started the restaurant, about their dreams for it, about why she chose you to carry on her legacy. She wrote that you understood something I never did, that success isn't about the money you make, but about the lives you touch. Take care of our family's heart. Love, James. I folded the note carefully and tucked it into the real recipe book, adding another page to our family's story. Then I started my closing routine, wiping tables, counting the register, preparing for tomorrow. But tonight, each task felt like more than just work. It felt like keeping a promise, honoring a legacy, protecting something precious. As I turned out the lights, I paused by the wall of family photos near the entrance. There was Nana and Grandpa on opening day, young and full of dreams. There was Dad in his favorite apron, flour on his nose. There was James and me as kids, helping make pizza dough. And there, in the center, was a photo of Nana teaching me to make her famous marinara sauce. Both of us laughing as steam rose from the pot. I touched the frame gently, remembering her words. Sometimes, Sophia, the secret ingredient isn't in the recipe at all. It's in the love you put into making it. She was right, of course, she usually was. And now, standing in the quiet restaurant that was finally, truly mine, I understood something else she tried to teach us. Sometimes the biggest victories don't come from selling out or scaling up, but from staying true to who you are and what you believe in. Tomorrow, Nana's place would open its doors again, ready to create new memories, share new stories, and keep our family's legacy alive. Not as a chain restaurant or a modernized concept, but as exactly what it was meant to be, a place where food was made with love, where tradition was honored, and where everyone who walked through the door became part of our extended family. And that, I realized, was worth more than any $1 million check could ever be.